Right, so welcome folks. Welcome to anyone watching on the video. I was saying to the others before, so we're recording and the top right of the screen up there will be my face. So if I do anything in the top right of the screen, let me know because that won't be visible to anyone watching the video later on. And one of the things we'll be talking about in this video is, in this session, is how to get to the videos later on. So I guess if you're already watching the video, then you won't find that bit useful. But there we go.
Good. Give you a feeling of a job well done.
Yeah. So just sort of housekeeping stuff, timing-wise, my hope is that every session I will be here from 2 o'clock, set up and whatever, and it won't actually take me half an hour to set up. So if you've got any questions from something we did last time, or anything else, like if we wanted to have a look and check whether we could get Zoom set up, etc. Yeah. I'm happy to do that then. Then we'll try to start at about 2:30. We'll have 3/4 of an hour of teaching, stuff I've prepared, and then we can have sort of 1/4 of an hour of asking any questions as a group. And then at about 3:30, I will start packing away, but then we can, people can ask me questions still while I'm packing away. And then I need to be back by 4 because I've got a meeting. Yeah. And there are 6 sessions that will get progressively a little bit more complicated. I'm not entirely convinced whether today's material will actually take us 3/4 of an hour, but we'll see how we go. So today we're going to talk about some jargon and what even the word jargon means. Then talk about how to find the videos, which today won't be a sort of follow along with laptops, because one of the things for next time will be how to connect a laptop to Wi-Fi. But I think we need to get some basics done first before that. And then we get onto email and web browsing and maybe a bit on Zoom and things like that. So yes, so today some jargon, then finding the videos, and then the third thing, possibly the most important from my perspective to teach, is when something goes wrong, how do you ask for help helpfully? How do you ask well as opposed to, well, I'll give an example later on, and that's what this Burpinator is for. It says Burpinator on the icon. You'll see it's very silly. Okay, so jargon first. And it occurred to me that I don't know how common the word jargon is. If I say jargon, do you know what I mean by jargon?
Yes.
Right, okay, good.
The word
right.
Connected with something you're learning about.
Yes, and that sort of impenetrable to people who aren't in the know. Yeah. So in Christian terms, things like grace and salvation and exegesis would be jargon, and someone coming from outside the church, right? Exegesis sort of studying scripture and Bible study, basically, but particularly textual kind of, so it can be very difficult, and anything I say, if I say any words that don't make sense, please just shout, because just as if we were in a church meeting, we might talk about grace and things and everyone would know, well, in my world of computing, everyone might know what something is, and if you've got no idea, then it's no point in me being here, as it were. So please just say, and we're going to start off with hardware and software. Now, out of interest, do you know what I mean if I talk about hardware and software and the difference between them?
Hardware's the equipment.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
hardware is the physical stuff that you can actually touch, and the software is. It's quite hard to come up with analogies for software because
that's what we don't understand.
Nothing within the world is like software, really. It's sort of like the difference between a physical book and the story that's within the book.
Yeah.
Ish. So all the programs you might run, and I'll talk about operating systems in a minute. That's all software. But I've got some examples of hardware. So, and this is partly just to get across the message that you do know enough to be at this course, as it were. So we have a keyboard. It's one piece of hardware. likewise a mouse. And if you've got a laptop, then you've probably got a trackpad on, and that's sort of the equivalent of a mouse. Now, obviously, a trackpad, well, most trackpads don't have obvious buttons. I would show you my laptop, but then anyone watching the video will get very confused as the whole thing turns round. But it's just a rectangle, and you can still touch it and click on it and things, but it's doing the same job as a mouse. We've
Does
got...
it have a left button and a right button?
Yes, so I will come back to that. Let me I meant to get my PowerPoint presentation of cables ready first, but let's go. Right, so some of the bits of hardware that we need to find and move around most often are cables. So that is an HDMI cable, also that, and that's used to connect a computer or a phone or something like that to something like a projector or monitor or screen, anything like that. Likewise, so on the left here is an HDMI socket. So we talk about, again, more jargon. So something like this is a plug. So the HDMI cable has a plug on the end, and a plug is the sort of outy bit that goes into a socket, which is the inny bit. And you might see some cables labelled with male and female, and not to be crude, the male bits have the sticking out bits, and the female bits have the whole. That's why they're called male and female. It's very handy, but if you're particularly prurient, then it's not ideal. So. So this is HDMI on the left, and then this is a VGA socket on the right. VGA is basically HDMI has replaced VGA, but they're both video cables. So if you had a laptop back in the 90s or something, it would almost certainly have had VGA, and you'd have had a cable with lots of little pins sticking out that could easily get bent and stuff. You look concerned, Jill.
No, I'm not concerned. I just don't. Well, you haven't said what it's for. But...
So it's the same as for HDMI. It's to connect a video source, so something that wants to show something, to something like a projector that is capable of showing something. So VGA and HDMI are similar things.
So that's putting the power in, and that's for producing something.
No, so I should probably. This picture was meant to just show the HDMI socket and the VGA socket. This particular device is a little thing so that you can plug in either HDMI or VGA, and it's got something coming out of the back that can connect it to a projector, so that it doesn't matter which of the two cables you've got. But
you've got to have some sort of computer at one end of the HDMI.
Yes, a computer or a video recorder might have HDMI these days. We used to have SCART. They're all lots of different cables for doing basically the same thing, getting pictures from one place to another. Right. Then beyond video things, we've got, this is one more video thing. This is Mini DisplayPort, which was fairly popular. It's about yay big, so about a centimetre wide. There's full-size DisplayPort that's a bit less common these days. I don't have any examples of Mini DisplayPort on me, but it's really just, if you see one of these, that you've got any idea what it's for. The socket for Mini DisplayPort looks a little bit like, the trouble, any analogies fall down if you don't know what I'm making an analogy with. A little bit like a USB socket, but sort of a little bit deeper. And I get very confused. There's so much in technology. Mini DisplayPort and something called Thunderbolt, which iPads not iPads so much as Mac computers will often have Thunderbolt connections. And they're very, very similar to Mini DisplayPort in that I don't know the technical differences. There are some compatibility things. So don't worry about it. This is just so that you can go back and say, I saw one of those cables, look on the video and say, aha, it was a Mini DisplayPort. thing.
Why
So-
would we possibly need one of those?
If you got a laptop that might have that instead of HDMI, or these days most things just have USB, which I'll come on to next, I think.
So if it's not specific for anything.
This is for video and sound. Goes over mini display port. Sound can go over HDMI as well. This is probably more familiar though. This is a USB-B plug. So these are usually used for, on the end of keyboards and mice and all kinds of things that you might plug in. And this is sort of, we've had
Charging your phone?
Yes, so charging your phone, you may well have a plug that goes into the wall and then a socket that you plug. Yes, I've got, exactly. So this is USB-B on one end, and because my phone takes USB-C, I've got another picture of USB-C in a minute, so you don't need to squint at this. You plug the USB-B side into the wall, and then the C side into the phone. But equally, you might, next time you get a phone, if it comes with a charger at all. I got a new phone last week because my previous one died, and it didn't come with a charger at all, which is great because I don't need another charger. I've got hundreds of them. It needs charging, but it just didn't come with a charger. Because they reckon that these days, if you're getting a new phone, you've probably got an old phone that's probably going to be able to charge the same thing.
When I got this newer iPad, I couldn't use the old one, but I gather somebody just told me what you said, that now they will all be...
Yes. So USB-C is almost everything will charge with USB-C. I can even charge the laptop with USB-C as well, if it's a nice high-powered charger. And it's nice, you can see on this picture that on USB-B, there's a bit that's filled in the plug and a bit that's sort of open. So you've got to put it in the right way. If I put this into my laptop correctly, it goes in. If I try to put it in upside down, it just doesn't fit. Whereas with, I'll come back to that, with USB-C, there is no upside down at all. It goes both ways, which is so much nicer. So that's USB-C, and that's quite relatively new. This one, out of interest, how many of you have seen anything like this? There's only one reason why most people would have seen this, and probably not for the last 10 years, and that's for printers. And this is USB-A, I think. And again, this is nothing you need to remember, partly because it's on the video, and partly it's just to sort of familiarise yourself and make it less scary that if you see something that you haven't seen before, it's okay. It's just another cable. And yes, you need to not try to jam one of these into the wrong port or whatever, but yeah. So you may see one of these if you're connecting up your computer to your router that's providing your internet connection. I'm not going to go into the details of what a router does, but this is an Ethernet cable. So it's just for networking stuff. Okay. Networking. So, how do you start talking about networking? No. It's computers talking to each other. So the internet is the inter-network. The net part of internet is network. So yeah, literally it's just computers talking to each other. So Wi-Fi is a kind of networking, so is wireless networking, whereas this the Ethernet cable is for wired networking, where there is a physical cable to somewhere else, and then maybe that goes on Wi-Fi, or maybe it goes on another cable. Sooner or later there are usually cables going around. So you will typically see an Ethernet port. Yes. So this at the bottom left here is an Ethernet port. So that's the socket that the cable would go into.
What's the box?
Sorry, the whole black box.
Yeah, is the whole thing is it the back of your computer?
No, this is actually a Raspberry Pi. This is Um,
That's not what I call it.
Raspberry Pi. So this might be the one that's now in the church, helping to control the mixer. So it's about yay big, and the Ethernet port is the one on the left, and the other 4 ports you've got here that on the middle and on the right, they're USB-B ports. So they're things that you can stick cable like that or a keyboard into, etc., etc. So yes, this is
John,
a
are you
very
saying
small
that
computer.
You wouldn't need everything at once. You would need it for what your connecting to. You would use one of those.
So if I needed to use USB,
Yeah.
if I needed to plug a keyboard into the
Yeah.
computer, I would use one of the USB ports.
Okay.
If I wanted it to be on the network, which I almost always would with a Raspberry Pi, Raspberry Pi is just the brand for a very small computer that's it's sort of hobbyist computer, low power, relatively
That's
cheap,
a computer
etc.
inside there, basically.
I'll show you later on a picture of the whole Raspberry Pi, but it is yeah. I wouldn't worry too much. The main point of this picture was literally just what the plug goes into.
I know to do all that. I don't understand anything like that.
That's fine. Don't worry about it. So literally just the bit on the left with the green and yellow LEDs that or lights that will go on and flash if there is any network activity. That's where you put that cable into. That was the point of the picture. And that's all the cables. So again, don't worry about trying to remember any of that.
No.
But we'll go back to mouse and keyboard because of things that we'll be talking about later on. So Mum asked, does the trackpad have a left button and a right button? So on a normal mouse, which this has got a scroll wheel in the middle, which not all mice do, but these days most do. It's got a right-hand button and a left-hand button. Macs don't tend to have right buttons. I've always found that slightly odd myself. I'm more of a Windows person, and I realise I haven't mentioned what a Mac is or what Windows is. It's one of these things you can't start one sentence without referring to something else that you haven't talked about. But usually with mice there is a left button and there's a right button, and clicking the left button is called left clicking, and clicking the right button is right clicking, and they do usually different things. On my laptop, and different laptops are different, some have 2 little buttons separately at the bottom of the trackpad, but on mine I can, if I click, you might be able to hear it. Can you hear this? It's quite a soft click. But if I left click, which is clicking anywhere in the sort of left 2/3 of the trackpad, that counts as a left click. If I just click on the right bit, it looks like it's the bottom right corner, that counts as a right click. And right clicks, typically in Windows, are about providing extra context. So where left click or potentially double clicking, which I'll come on to, does something like the natural thing that you want to do with whatever you're trying to interact with, if you right click, it will just give you different options. So it's the sort of advanced bit, as it were. So as an example, I will talk more about folders and files in a minute, but I've got a folder here, and if I just double click on that, it opens it, because that's normally what you want to do. That's double left click. Yes. I don't remember ever having to double right click anything. Sort of left click is the default, and if someone just says click on the button, they mean left click.
I never know whether it's double click or click, because some of them, particularly opening attachments, I have terrible problems with.
Yes, it can vary depending on exactly what the context is, unfortunately.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I don't have a desk. I've only got the iPad.
Right.
I don't have a mouse, obviously, but on that. So is what you're saying at the moment very similar to what the computer?
Yes.
The mouse.
Yes. So in fact, it makes more sense to talk about it on a computer where you've got an actual mouse and left click and right click is very obvious. I haven't got an actual mouse at all. I've got come up and have a look rather than me spinning it round. But it's literally just a rectangle that if I just drag my finger around the rectangle, then it's like moving the mouse. And then if I can actually just tap and it will do something.
It's that bit there.
Yeah.
But I don't.
I see that.
Right. So you've got Mum's laptop has specific left and right buttons at the bottom with the red lines on. Yes. So those are the buttons. Whereas mine doesn't have anything like that. It's just a sort of blank bit of trackpad. And you just have to kind of know where will be a right click. But yes, it's absolutely the same.
That's a bit more foolproof, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I've never used this until lunchtime today. It's Richard's, not mine. So
right.
Because I use the computer. I can't use it. But he managed. He wanted me to bring a mouse, and I said no. I'll see if I can. I managed to get it, but I haven't.
And today's will be less interactive than future sessions, anyway.
We're talking about
right.
That.
Yes.
Yours,
so it looks from here, Mary, as if yours is like mine. It's just a blank bit of yes. So I would expect that if you sort of press hard enough for it to click a bit in near the bottom right, then that would count as a right click, as it were. But we won't be able to tell easily. I'm happy to look afterwards, but we wouldn't be able to tell without signing in first and things. So to take a
shall she turn it off now?
yeah, it's probably but we can definitely have a. If you just close it, I would expect it to almost certainly go to sleep, and I can see the power.
Yes, it's going to.
So right, I can see a power light from here. So if you leave it facing me, leave it as it is. Right, it's yes, the light is flashing, which means it's going to sleep. That's fine. Great.
Does that mean that it's using less power?
Yes.
Right.
So to take a step back, having mentioned Macs and Windows and PC and desktop and laptop and things, so I think we probably all know what a laptop is. When Jill said, would my computer be the same? I think when you said computer is when I would personally say desktop.
Okay.
Because no, you don't absolutely don't need to. If anyone asks for clarification, if someone says desktop or laptop, if it's not a portable thing, it'll be a desktop. If it's sitting somewhere,
that makes sense. Yes.
Even though, and people used to put desktops on their desks, and we don't these days. They typically sit on the floor somewhere, and only the monitor and keyboard and mouse is on the desk, but it's still a desktop. This is one of the troubles with computer terminology is a lot of it made sense back then, back when it was invented, but doesn't so much now.
It's moved on.
So as an example, how many of us use manila folders these days for things? Which that's why when people talk about folders, it's meant to be reminiscent of.
I have a terrible problem with. I cannot get into. Dad's always saying, "Oh, that's a folder." That's
Files and
folders.
folders.
Yes.
They're all the same as
Right. Well, and this is why we're going to cover it.
Good.
And I'll go into more detail about it in a little bit. But I just wanted to say, as an example.
Which I'm sorry, I can't read the writing underneath.
So that says
folders.
another folder.
Yeah.
That says nested folder. This says some random document.txt.
Right.
I'll come back to it, but it's just we don't use manila. If I showed one of my kids a manila folder and said, "What's that?" They wouldn't say it's a folder. They'd say, "That's weird. What is it? Looks a bit like a folder on the computer, but it's not a folder." And likewise, you'll see where these days there are fewer places where you have to save something explicitly anyway. Typically things just save automatically, but if you do, there'll be a little icon with a floppy disk. And floppy disks weren't floppy, at least by the time you got to the ones that were that size, the 3.5 inch ones. When we have 5.25 inch floppy disks, they were a bit floppy. You don't actually want to, bend them, but so it's all. No one uses floppy disks for anything these days. The closest you might get is having a USB stick. So This is 32 gig USB drive that I just have on my keyring just in case I need to do anything. But yes, it was only when I was in university we were still using floppy disks a lot. But these days it just looks.
Doing for you then?
So if I wanted to put something onto Mary's laptop, for example,
Right.
I could put this into my computer,
Yeah.
and then, right, in fact, if I do,
Oh, and record
and-
something.
well,
from-
and copy it.
yeah.
So if I
So
pop
that's
that
like
in,
a stick. Is it?
it is a stick.
Oh,
Yes.
right.
So
I've taken sticks to.
in fact, it's got the history of Christianity on it,
Oh, right.
No.
and I could then put it into Mary's
Right,
computer
so you
and
copy it
copy
in.
things over. Yes.
And you would actually be then physically transferring it over.
Yes.
From there to there. Right.
Yes.
Everything's gone, Dawn. I don't
Yes,
think-
that's fine. That was because I took the stick out, having moved to
Is
it.
it worries us?
Yes. No, it hasn't actually lost anything. So we've said desktop computers and
Computer.
laptops they're all computers, and there's this slightly odd thing about, we talk about a PC versus a Mac. So Apple Mac, and PC just stands for personal computer. So really, Macs are PCs as well. They're still personal computers. We should really talk about Windows computers, or computers running Windows and computers running what's called Mac OS. And the difference there is operating system. That's what the OS of, if you hear people talk about Mac OS or iOS or Android or Windows, those are operating systems. And I was trying to work out a good analogy for operating systems earlier on. And the closest I could come to was church denominations. So you can imagine a bit of hardware being like a church building, and different denominations worshipping at different times in the same building. So one church could have a Catholic mass in the morning and a Methodist service in the evening, and it's unlikely, just as most hardware is built to run one operating system usually, leaving out the ones that when we're talking about consumer operating systems, so Windows or Mac. And if you were a Methodist and you went into a Catholic mass, you would recognise things, but there would be various things that were unfamiliar to you. So likewise, if you're used to your Android tablet and someone gives you an iPad, like, well, I can sort of get around, but there's a button and I don't know what that does, and I don't quite know how to get to the settings, and get me into the YouTube app and I can probably type something, but it all feels a little bit odd. But they're basically different ways of doing the same things. Do you see what I mean with the whole sort of different denominations? It's sort of, yeah.
I've got a friend who's got an Apple and she's Mac, and she will not use an ordinary computer. I mean, they're very much.
Yeah, it's a bit of a wedge issue.
Right,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So, yeah. This course will only be about Windows. When there's anything that's computer specific, it will be about Windows, because that's what I know and what I think most of us would be using. If there are folks that want an Apple version, then they can. I'm sure there'll be someone around who can help them. Right. Let me have a quick list of my. Right. I think we've covered most of the jargon, and we've talked about clicking and right-clicking and double-clicking.
Took your attention away in the middle of you were on files and folders.
Yep, I'm going to come back to that specifically. But one more bit of not so much jargon, but thinking about keyboards and sort of the equivalent of talking about left-clicking and right-clicking and double-clicking. If I say something like, in order to print, you press Control P. Okay, what I mean by that is you hold down the Control button and press P and release P, and all the time I've got Control held down. If I say Control Shift D, I mean hold down the Control button, hold down the Shift button, and then press D.
Sorry,
Okay.
which is the shift?
So Shift is the one just above Control.
Control.
So it's how you.
Got an arrow up.
Oh yes, So an arrow up is like shift. So between control and caps lock. Yes. Yes, and it's
right. So that's
I think on an actual typewriter it would shift
control.
literally shift the keys so that when you pressed the key it would do the top bit instead of the bottom bit, or vice versa.
Like when people have in their email address that low dash.
The underscore.
Oh, underscore.
So yes, we should probably let's.
It's really. I wish people would have that. To
Yeah.
be honest,
Yeah.
I'm sorry if any of you have, but
Yeah.
no, I have.
So let's just look at if I launch Notepad, and let's.
Are you still
If I-
recording that for yourself?
All of this is recording. Yes.
You're not on.
Yeah, it's fine. It will be on the video. I am on the
Oh,
video
I
bit.
see it. You don't see
It's
it
overlaying
separate.
it. Yes.
No.
So
Yeah.
looking over just at the punctuation on the top row of the keyboard on a UK keyboard, and let's put the. So let's zoom in. So you probably won't see this one much. This is a backtick, and that's at the top left of the keyboard. Exclamation mark, double quote, pound sign. Now, if you hear any Americans talking about a pound, they don't mean pound, they mean hash.
Wait.
Oh, well, they mean the hash symbol. So I'll show you that in a sec. But dollars, percent. I don't know how most people would refer to this. I refer to it as a caret. CARET, and single R, not double R. That's shift 6.
An upside down
Uh,
V. Is it?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Um,
I see. Yes.
Yep, you don't tend to need that very often. An ampersand, star, left and right parentheses, underscore, and then plus, and then the other.
Oh, that's your underscore, Jill. isn't
Yes.
it? Then?
Yep, yep. So
Above the hyphen.
yes.
Yeah.
Other ones that you might get. So that's a backslash, and you'll see that particularly on Windows if you're looking at the names of files in folders, which we'll come back to.
Good.
And its counterpart is the forward slash. There's also pipe, which you won't see very often, I shouldn't think. Normal punctuation of semicolon and colon. The @ sign, which I don't know what anyone used it for before email addresses, but it's basically that's what email addresses and Twitter things. Apostrophe or single quote. If you ever see that squiggle, that's a tilde.
What?
Tilde. TILDE. And
And what's it for?
depends on your context. You probably won't need it very often, basically. And this is what I would call a hash, and that's what Americans would call pound. So if you're ever getting confused because you're watching an American video and they say, pound whatever, they mean hash. And they haven't got the message that like a hashtag is, it starts with a hash. Fortunately, they don't insist on calling them pound tags. So the hash is probably
Oh, I've got it.
yes.
It's under the tilde.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there are also curly braces and square brackets.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yes.
And again, you probably don't need to use most of those. Most of the time, you'll be writing emails or whatever, and whatever you wouldn't put in. I don't think many people would start putting tildes in handwritten letters or whatever, so you probably won't need it for other things. But it's just worth being aware that they are all there. And there's a sort of bizarre back square tick thing that is shown on the keyboard, but oh yeah, there we go. I can actually produce it. I don't even know what that's meant to be called, and I don't think I've ever used it.
I had a keyboard once that the @ and the pounds or the no, it was the @ and the apostrophe, the parenthesis marks were reversed. So if I wanted to press @ I had to press the parentheses, and if I
Oh.
wanted, if
Oh,
I
that's very
wanted
odd.
it, yeah,
Very
they
odd.
were- it was,
Yeah.
it was really, but I knew it, and it was nice and good, and it was always the same. It was always consistent. But
So other keys that you should be aware of that don't print anything, as it were. I've mentioned control a few times, and there's one there and one in the bottom right as well.
right, yeah.
It will be, if you haven't used control much, you will a lot when I cover copy and pasting in
That's-
probably next session. There's Alt.
You're not in it. No.
It's fine.
We'll-
There'll be
we'll
the
need to
video.
have-
It will be fine, and you can always
we'll
ask
get
me any
together,
questions.
Jill, 'cause I'm not in
Um,
it. Right.
Alt is also used in what we call keyboard shortcuts. So a keyboard shortcut is a way of doing something quickly using just the keyboard, which you could usually do with the mouse instead by clicking on something, but it's generally easier to just use the keyboard shortcut. So for example, I could close this window by clicking on that, or I could press Alt F4. And it goes away. So that was me holding down, and
Yeah,
it's
we-
slightly more confusing on a laptop because there may not be dedicated function keys. They're often function and doing something like controlling the volume and whatever. And the exact nature of that will depend on your laptop. You're probably going to be okay on that, Jill, because you'll probably have a keyboard like this, which
I'm on
has
the computer, yes, but I can't.
yes. So
Just probably
Alt F4.
the control thing. When you put them into delete and then you go into delete and I've always had to do it one by one. I've never found out what to. I think it's control and something to do a whole load at one go. I
Right.
mean, they've all lit up, so I can press
So
delete
I'm
and the
not-
whole lot goes.
I don't know which context you're talking about, and this we'll come back to that in
emails.
the right. Okay, and I was missing that context.
Sorry, I
well,
probably
no,
didn't say
no,
it.
and that's going to be a great example for later on.
Okay.
When I talk about how to report problems helpfully, as it were. So
Can I just ask?
Yep.
You said Control F4.
yes,
That is not Control.
no, Alt F. It was Alt, Alt and Function 4.
Alt.
The F4 key that should be a bit above the 4.
Yeah, that F4 is Function 4.
Yeah.
But it's also got some sort of picture of somebody running on it.
Right.
How
So
do you get F4 rather than the running?
that will depend on your specific laptop. So on mine, I actually pressed Alt and the function key and F4. If I'd had function lock on, I wouldn't have had to press the function key. I'll have a look later on, and I'm happy to look at anyone's specific laptop and say this is how you do function
The top
keys.
of a key,
But
yeah.
it's one of those that is specific to each. Yeah.
Right.
I needn't have worried about us finishing really early, need I?
No.
It's good. It's good. Right. So that's all. I said I would come back to files and folders. Let's do a bit of that. So everything that's on your disk, and the reason they were called disks was because they used to be on things that were spinning round, but think of it as a place you can store things. Everything ultimately is a file, and a file could be a video file or a document or a presentation or a program, etc. And just as you wouldn't have everything that's in your house just on the floor in your lounge, you'd never find anything. We organise things using folders, and folders can be nested inside each other, just like you might have a storage cupboard somewhere that's got a box in, and in the box are some photos. Or it might even be in the box are some photo albums, and you could think of each of those albums as another folder, and then so that sort of container idea nests. So a folder is a container of other folders and files.
The box is the file.
The box is the folder. Everything until you get down to a photo is a folder, because it's all anything that's containing other things is going to be a folder.
Oh. So what's
Okay.
the file then?
Right. So file is one thing. So a document,
Right.
a photo, a video, a song.
Right.
Okay.
Ah,
So here we've got
that's what I've never understood.
right. Okay. That's absolutely fine. And if you think of it, it's meant to be like a manila folder would have several documents in it.
Yeah.
Now the analogy breaks down because manila folders didn't typically have other manila folders inside them.
No, but
I won't go into details today about the sort of special folders for downloads and the desktop and things. But here we have a folder which happens to be on my desktop called demo folder. I've opened it up. So it's got some random document, and if I open that, it's just empty. So that's a file. This is a file. I can save that, and I would be able to open that up again. But I can also go into one folder that's nested underneath demo folder, and if I open things up, we can see, hopefully, if I go up here, it says users, Skeet, desktop, demo folder, another folder. So that's the path right from what's called the root. C : is the root of the C drive. You don't need to worry too much about this other than to know if you see something like this, the reason it's got all those backslashes, that's going from one folder to another folder nested within it to another folder nested within it, and then eventually it could be /somedocument.txt. Okay, so that's called a path to a file or a folder. And in fact, so another folder is empty, but nested folder has a deeply nested folder, and so you can see it just keeps going and going and going, and you don't want to do it arbitrarily deeply, but this is a way that you can organize things. So in my documents, I've got a bunch of stuff. I've got something for the church website, something for computing, and under computing I've got books and talks and whatever. Now you can see already, actually, this is a different view. Windows lets you choose how you want to view the contents of a folder. I like this particular view, which shows everything in a list with details. So it's got the size and things like that. And I've also got an option that I always turn on, which is show the file extension. So the name of this file is careersinsoftware.docx. Usually, you would probably see it like that, with it just careers in software, and you would sort of guess, well, it must be a Word document because it's got the little Word icon next to it. But actually, even though I've hidden that file extension, which is just the bit after the last dot in a file name, it's still there really. I can unhide it, show file name extensions, and there we go. It's there again. So again, don't worry if sometimes you see those and sometimes you don't. It's probably just that someone's got different options. And likewise, if it's showing as a list versus if it's showing as large icons. It's just a different way of looking at the folder. It doesn't actually change what's in the folder.
But if we record something in a way on our computer, that should always come back the same as we've recorded it.
Yes, if you create two files, they will both show the file name or file extension or not. We'll probably end up seeing folders and files quite a bit more, but that if that general idea of folders are containers of other things, where those other things can be more folders or files, you can get an awfully long way.
Little individual things within the folder.
Yes.
Right. That's what I'd always had.
So it gets slightly more confusing when you've got something like a zip file. So people might have emailed you a zip file before, and a zip file is a file that's cleverly got more files within it. But fundamentally, it's only when you try to open it as a file that it says, I've got these three things in. Okay, we'll come back to let that percolate a bit, and next time if you've got any questions about files and folders, we can definitely, I think, understanding how to navigate the file system, as we call it, when you're comfortable doing that, life is so much better, basically.
Because one of the things that my friend is very efficient at, is putting emails into groups.
Right.
That's one thing I want to know.
And that's So when
giving
we
a
look
heading
at
and all their ones from Pamela are under the same.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
and that will depend on what email provider you're using and then which email program you're using, just to make things more. So so emails don't tend to be stored as an individual file per email, but almost every provider will have some way of having. So I hardly ever delete anything. I what's called archive them, so I don't have to see them all the time. But if I want to go back, I've got bazillions of emails from the past.
That's what I mean. If I want to refer to, I don't know, a doctor's report thing, I just write in the top bit, and it gives me all of them. But if I had them in a file, in a folder.
Well, so yeah, I wouldn't worry too much. So emails are organised in similar ways sometimes, but it's not quite the same as actual files and folders. Right, so let's get on to how we'll get back to this video, and it's going to be interesting to see how this video turns out, because there's been more back and forth between us, which is great, than I'd expected. So probably people listening to the video won't have been able to hear what you've asked if I've forgotten to repeat it.
Just as well.
No. However, so all the videos will be on the church's YouTube channel in a playlist called Computer Course. I'm going to show you 3 different ways of getting that today. So firstly, I've put a link on the church website. So if you happen to know that the church website is at tarhurstmethodist.org.uk, you can just start typing that in. If you forget that, then you can type in Tarhurst Methodist Church to your favourite search engine, and it really should. I would be surprised if you didn't get the top result being the website. Yes.
Tarhurst Methodist Church.
Right. So go into the church website by clicking on it, and then the thing you need to know, because I thought it would be a little bit rude to stick it as a top level menu item just up there. So it's under regular activities and then Computer Course. So I'm just clicking on the link each time. Well, I'm also going to put a link to this in the notices, which will be a 4th way of doing it, hopefully. So on this page, there's a link that says dedicated playlist, and if we visit that, it shows up here. And so session 1 will show up sometime tonight when I've uploaded it. So that was one way of doing it, via the church website. If you remember that it's on YouTube but don't want to have to go through the church website, you can open YouTube by just typing YouTube, and it will come up. You can then.
I had no idea how to get
right.
to YouTube. So
okay. We will. I think session 3 might be web browsing and things. Again, I went via the address bar at the top. But if you search for YouTube in Google, it will get you a link, etc. So within YouTube, there's a search, and I've obviously searched for it before. But if you search for Tarhurst Methodist Church, now this will show you some videos, but more importantly, this bit up here is what's called the channel, which is all of our videos basically, instead of going to one video. So if you go to the channel page and then playlists, and then view full playlist of the Computer Course playlist.
Sorry, I didn't see where playlists was the.
So there's home, video, playlists, and community.
That's right. So you click on the circular one first.
Yes. So click on that to get you to this page.
Yeah.
Then click on playlists, and then scroll down, and then view full playlist will give you the list of everything.
Right.
So that's the second way of getting there. The third way we'll actually cover later on will be, I'll get you all onto that page, and then we'll create a bookmark so that you can get back there really easily. So that's the advanced bit. So we're not doing that today. But okay, so hopefully, and I will put a link in the notices.
Do we need to write that down? What you've just
Nope.
told us, or will you put it on
I-
the screen and we can go follow you?
Yes, so we'll all do it interactively in another session, and you'll have it in the notices, so you'll just be able to click a link
Click
that
it
would go
and
straight to
scroll
here.
through. Yeah.
The click on the notices will give us the last computer course.
No, it will go to this page that's got. So
All of them.
when I've uploaded today's,
He's shown.
it will have another one there. In fact,
Yeah,
it will
it
probably be
goes-
at the top because it'll be
okay.
newest
So
first.
we can just go on and see them.
See the whole list.
Brilliant.
Yep.
And remember the bits.
So that's, well, this is it.
Yeah.
That's 6 hours for you.
I don't write it down. That's why I asked.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
It's our memory.
final thing for today. This is the slightly selfish bit, which is me hopefully teaching you to be more precise when you come to me with a problem. Okay, so everyone's it's not that bad. It really isn't.
I know. I'm just not very concise ever.
No, not being concise isn't a problem. Not being precise is the problem, as
Okay.
it were.
Yeah.
So
Not waffle.
we've all asked people for help. Asking people for help is a good thing. I don't really don't want you to feel that you can't ask people, including me, for help. But there are good and bad ways of doing it. So let me show you something going wrong. So we're going to open Burpinator. So this is a little program that I started today. And if I click on work, works fine. If I click fail, it gives an error.
I can't see what
Right.
were the two boxes that came up with.
So the first one said success,
Right,
and
right.
this one says error. The program has failed because the grobulator was too flibbly.
Oh, I
Okay,
see.
and then when you click OK, it just everything will go. It just goes away. It's crashed. Oh no! What a problem! We need to ask for help. So what we could say is, well, I start and I press the button and it doesn't work. Okay, literally, I've had people expecting me to be able to diagnose what the problem is from that. To quote St. Paul, I will show you a more excellent way, which is, right, I have an application called Burpinator, which I use to do research into knitting patterns for scarves. This doesn't actually, but it's giving some context of what you're trying to do and what program you're using. When I start the application, it shows me two buttons labelled work and fail. When I click the work button, a dialog comes up saying success, this is working fine. If I click the fail button, a dialog pops up saying error, the program has failed because the grobulator was too flibbly. I don't know what a grobulator is or why the program is crashing. Please help.
Or what fiddler means.
Indeed. So that second way of describing things, there were terms I was using. You might not know what a dialogue is, and that's fine, but you could say a box pops up, but it was all the description, everything, what was working and what it meant for something to work was, well, another box came up saying success, this has worked. And when there was an error, it was the exact error message, not just it went wrong or it crashed. I will maybe, depending on how we do, teach you how to get a screenshot of this so that you could email me or somebody else or whoever exactly what it is. But if nothing else, you can get a physical notebook out and copy that error message saying, you're not expected to know what a grobulator is and whether it's too flibbly. Those are deliberately nonsense things because they will feel like nonsense when you get another error message, but they will mean something to someone else.
Oh.
My problem is if I do something and the error disappears and I don't know.
Yes, that is difficult. When error messages disappear before you have a chance to look at them properly, there's not very much you can do other than describe exactly what you were doing to get there, and maybe we can reproduce it and work out what's going on. But often the error message, it might be that the first time the error message went away because you just hit return quickly because you're expecting it to do something else, and then try doing the same thing again, but taking more time and maybe writing down every step that you're doing, and if the error message comes up, then maybe you won't have hit return this time, and you can write things down. So that was all I wanted to show, that the difference between, well, I started the thing and it didn't work versus exactly step by step.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. This is not by any means a problem that's isolated to any generation or group in society. Even the question and answer website that I use a lot, called Stack Overflow, where people ask technical questions. They're programmers asking questions, and they will leave out the most important bits of context and trying to persuade people, no, I know you may know what you're talking about, but you haven't told us. Which is, I'm trying to help you. Please help me to help you. So it's just,
if you do something automatically, I'm used to getting in by pressing that and pressing that and pressing that and pressing that, and then something comes up and it doesn't come up.
right.
What have I done that's different?
Right,
I
and that's
don't know
where if you start again and write down what you're doing as you're doing it, and write it down on a piece of paper so that you're not trying to switch between applications or whatever, and just go slowly, then often you may notice what you've done differently, and if you don't, then you'll have a record that you can give to someone else for what's happened.
Because it's it's remembering what I've done and where I've done it and what came up.
Yes, absolutely. And then the other thing, I can see you feeling stressed just thinking about it.
Yes,
the other thing is just not to panic. The time to panic is when you desperately need to send that email. Your phone only has 1% of battery, and you can't log in. Okay, that's okay to panic. But if actually there's no real urgency other than you're frustrated by it, then just get yourself a cup of tea or whatever. Calm yourself down. Get pad and pen, and so write down, and definitely any error message. Don't just say it failed. The exact error message makes all the difference.
Yeah.